what I want to say is you're gonna hear some really cool information from David today, and if there's something in particular that you'd like, you could email me and then I can email it to David, or you can email David directly. He'll tell you his contact information, then we'll share it with the group on a grander scale at the end of the meeting. So anytime that you feel there's something you missed, either reach out to David or reach out to me, and we'll share it with the group too. So thank you, David. And now I'm going to hand over the mic to Ruth, who's going to more formally introduce David. Take it away, Ruth.
Hi. I've never met David, but I know his family well. I know his sister, who's a fantastic therapist, occupational therapist, and his mom, who's joining us today, who is a canasta player. You don't want to bet against her. And now it's my pleasure to tell you a little bit about David. When he was working as a bag boy in his grandfather's Roger Park grocery store in 1970, he was fascinated by the dimes, quarters, half dollars, and more nickels that would appear in the cash register. He exchanged the modern version for silver change and started his 40-plus years interest in gold and silver. He has been actively purchasing unwanted gold and silver items from clients at the highest prices for the past 5 years, and enjoys educating people on the value of gold and silver jewelry, flatwares and coin, and much more. It's my pleasure to introduce David, who's going to demystify the myths around gold and silver. Take it away, Dave.
Thank you so much, Ruth. That was a great introduction. And thank you for, again, having me at this presentation. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So let me know when everybody sees my opening slide.
Okay.
There we go. And I don't know, how do I get rid of...
Should we all mute ourselves?
I see it.
All right, there we go. I don't know if you got to mute yourself. Just don't get on another phone call while I'm presenting. That'll be okay. So again, as Ruth said, David Kaz, president of DMK Metal. I basically buy the gold and silver that kids and grandkids don't want. So things like old flatware, old broken jewelry, gold jewelry, coins, anything like that that people might want to sell for various reasons. So I'm going to jump in. I've got a lot of information to share. I think we'll take questions at the end, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
And I have a lot of conspiracy theories, conspiracy facts throughout my presentation, and encourage you to do your own research, because if I got something wrong or you just think I'm off base, you can definitely, I recommend doing some research. All right, so I call the presentation Demystifying Gold and Silver. And
Excuse me, there's somebody messing in their kitchen and we hear pots and pans and stuff.
Okay, let's mute ourselves, everybody.
Okay. Well, you can still hear me. So I call it Demystifying Gold and Silver because I try to bring it down to earth about the history, the value, what gold and silver are all about. But the history of gold and silver are very mystical, especially gold. So historically, the name came from, the Latin name aurum comes from the word yellow, and gold is the only yellow metal out of all the precious metals. The Egyptians 5,000 years ago believed that gold came from the sun, and they called the sun god Ra. And while it didn't come from our sun, the actual creation of gold comes from the explosion of a supernova. So in essence, it does come from a star. Now, you can also look at gold. I'm not always going to say gold and silver. Sometimes I'll just say gold. So just to keep it shorter. But gold is known throughout history as God's money. It was mentioned in the Bible hundreds of times and first mentioned in the first book of Genesis. A lot of us might remember Charlton Heston and the Ten Commandments. They had the golden calf, right? And then the Ark of the Covenant that held the Ten Commandments was also made out of gold. Baby Jesus, the three wise men who gave him gifts, one of the gifts was gold. And if you look at artwork throughout history, it's always a golden halo. So gold is the representation of the mystical, the magical, the religious. Just an aside, silver bullets are what are used to kill werewolves. Not really religious, but definitely mystical. The Catholic Church has amassed gold for over 2,000 years, and all religions, and you can see in the upper right-hand corner, use gold and silver in their symbology, jewelry, things like chalices, statues, art, architecture, various objects. I think Ruth mentioned candelabras. So throughout history, it's been used for religious purposes. But what is gold? Let's bring it down to earth, and the less mystical would be it is an element. And throughout history, there were kings who actually tried to make gold. They had folks that they called alchemists who would try to combine different metals to create gold, but you cannot create gold out of mixing metals because it's truly an element on the periodic table. In the middle, you see the various precious metals. You've got iridium, platinum, palladium, silver. Gold is the only one that's yellow. All the other ones are silver colored. Now, of the precious metals, there's 4 that when you invest in them, you do it based on troy ounce. And a troy ounce is a little bit heavier than a regular ounce that we're used to. It's about 10% heavier. And if you look at this table, it kind of shows you the density of the 4 troy elements. So platinum is the most dense, then gold, then palladium, and then you see silver. So if you look in the upper right of my screen, you'll see 2 coins that are 1 troy ounce. One is gold and one is silver. And the silver is almost double the size of gold. So if you ever hold gold in your hand, it feels very heavy. It's almost double the density of silver. Now gold, let's focus in on gold, has very special properties that have really made it something of value throughout history. So first, it's the only of the yellow metals, truly brilliant yellow. It's got a luster and a glow to it. It's the most ductile of all elements or metals out there. So you can pound it into a very thin layer that they call a gold leaf. That's what they put on things like artwork and picture frames and things like that. It's also very malleable. It can be bent and shaped into any type of object you want. You could even take a 1 ounce gold coin and stretch it in a thin wire over a mile long. It is that malleable. It's also the best conductor of electricity known to man and of heat. It's soluble, so it has the ability to be dissolved within acid. And its scarcity is one of the main reasons that it has value. But while it's scarce, it can be found in every continent across the globe. So it's very scarce, but you can also find it everywhere, just in small amounts. It's corrosion resistant. So if you go on a excursion into the sea to find a buried treasure, a sunken ship, and you pull gold coins up, they have the same luster and glow and shine as 500 years ago when that ship sunk. Or if anybody went to see King Tut's tomb at the Museum of Science and Industry a few years back, when they dug into that pyramid and found that tomb, same luster as when it was buried 5,000 years ago. And density I covered already. It's a highly dense element. So think about the gold and silver supply. Historically, the amount of gold that would come out of the ground would increase by 5% every year. And historically, the population of the world would grow by 5%. So gold, and I'll explain gold as money as we go through this presentation, kept up with the increase of the population. So if you hear about can we ever use gold again as money, historically it did keep up exactly with the increase in the gold in the world kept up with the population. A good gold mine, you'd have to dig up a ton of rock to get 1 little gram of gold, and that's a high producing mine. So it used to be that you could find gold much easier. Today it's incredibly hard. So all the easy gold has been found. So a good producing gold mine, you got to dig 1 ton of rock to get 1 gram. Silver is different. Silver is usually a byproduct in mining for other metals. So if you're mining for silver, lead, copper, silver, there's very few mines across the world that are dedicated to just silver. It's usually a byproduct of other metals. Almost every ounce of gold that's been mined is still in existence in jewelry, bars, or coins, whereas almost every ounce of silver has been used up. So that is one reason I truly like silver as an investment. It's actually above ground, more scarce than gold. As far as the supply, about 75% of the increase of supply comes from mining, and the rest is from what I do, which is called recycling. I recycle people's old gold and silver, get it back into production to create new jewelry, bars, coins, things like that. And coming out of the ground, there's about 9 ounces of silver to every 1 ounce of gold. Historically, it was closer to 15 to 1. And the value today in the market is about 75 ounces of silver to every 1 ounce of gold. I'm going to explain more as we go. All right, so I'm going to give a little bit of a history. So gold was first discovered in Egypt about 5,000 years ago, and it was used throughout history as money, as I'll explain here in a little bit. Almost every war, even today's wars, can be traced back to the desire to take other countries' gold. Now, they also, a lot of countries would overtake others from an empire standpoint to enslave their people. But a lot of it revolves around stealing their gold. And even more common wars over the last 20 years, when the countries have gone down, somehow their gold goes missing. So it's still the same today. So gold was first used in Egypt. Again, I mentioned that the Egyptians thought it came from the sun god known as Ra. They mined it along the River Nile. It was used for religious ceremonies, burials. They saw gold as eternal. So that mystical nature of gold is what the Egyptians really loved. And while the Egyptians didn't really use gold as money, they didn't make coins out of gold, they did use grains as an exchange. So they did use gold as a means of exchange when they're, trading for a cow, a camel, whatever it was, they could use grains of gold. And it wasn't until a country called Lydia that's long gone, which is now in Western Turkey, they were the first to actually create coins out of gold, and that was in the 6th century BC. China also coined gold and silver as well to make their money. And ironically, China was the first country to actually make paper money. And I'll talk about that a little bit more later. Greece, the Roman Empire, these empires did overtake other countries to take their gold. The Roman Empire, as they grew and grew and grew too large, and the people no longer wanted to pay taxes with their gold and silver coins, what the politicians did is they started adding copper and other base metals to the coinage, and that is known as debasing. And eventually, all the coins turned to bronze, and the Roman Empire fell. And historically, there's a strong correlation between the debasement of your currency, or going away from gold and silver, to empires falling. That's happened throughout all of history. All the European countries switched to using gold and silver when countries, when like the Spanish explorers, when they found the US or the American colonies, and they went to Central and South America, they were looking for gold. That's why they were going out and exploring. But in South and Central America, they found way more silver than gold. Then eventually the Spanish real, also known as a piece of 8, became one of the most common used coins. And even the colonies, before we minted our own coinage, used the real as our means of exchange here before we became the United States. So let's dig a little bit into gold and silver as money in the United States. So Thomas Jefferson, one of the heroes of gold and silver, actually wrote in 1784 what became the Coinage Act of 1792, when gold and silver became constitutional money, hard money, real money. And within the Constitution, it actually defines the eagle and how many grains of gold is in the eagle, which is a $10 gold coin. A double eagle was a $20 gold coin. And it also defined how many grains of silver was in the $1 silver coin. And if you look at the upper right, you'll see that an old silver dollar, one like this is a Morgan. So we had the Morgan, the peace dollar. Before the Morgan, there were seeded, there were other types of silver dollars. But this has about 3/4 of an ounce of silver in it, whereas the $10 gold coin had about very close to half a troy ounce, or a double eagle had very close to 1 troy ounce of gold. So historically, the gold to silver ratio in the Constitution was 15 to 1. It changed to 16 to 1, just a slight change. And that's because the founders, and historically coming out of the ground, there was 15 ounces of silver coming out of the ground for every 1 ounce of gold. In 1776, to fund the Revolutionary War, who became the founders actually created the Continental Dollar, which was a paper currency. and very quickly went to the value of the paper, which was zero. And there was a phrase that came out of that called not worth a continental. So when you tell someone that something they own is not worth a continental, you're basically saying it's not worth anything. Alexander Hamilton in 1791 actually founded the first bank of the US, which right away went against the Constitution, because the Constitution said there would be no central bank. But Hamilton found the first bank of the US, and it only lasted until 1811. Then the second bank of the US arose as well. And in 1836, Andrew Jackson killed the second bank. And supposedly his dying words on his deathbed was, "I killed the bank." Historically, when you had paper currency that was issued by a private bank and eventually issued by now the Fed, it was a means of, it was basically a receipt against gold that was stored in the bank. So gold was the money, and the paper was a receipt in order to retrieve the physical gold. So if you look at old bills that were created by private banks, it was basically a receipt to claim someone's gold. In 1848, gold was discovered in California, which led to a huge migration of people west. And the biggest migration came in 1849. And these were all these prospectors, about 300,000. And that's where the San Francisco 49ers got their name. It was the San Francisco 49ers were the prospectors. In 1860, and I'm giving a very short history, guys, so again, dig in on your own research. In 1861, as we went into the Civil War, Lincoln printed the gold back. So again, people, the citizens, do not like paying taxes for wars throughout history. They don't like to do that. So governments will tend to go to paper, and he printed what were called the greenbacks. And those greenbacks also very quickly lost their value since they were not backed by gold. And then from 1870 to 1971, all the paper currency issued in the US was backed by the gold sitting in Fort Knox. So that's a very, it's 100 years, but I'll dig in a little bit deeper. So in 1910, there were 6 bankers and a New York senator that went to Georgia, and they had a private meeting, a secret meeting, on an island off the coast of Georgia called Jekyll Island. And there's a great book called Creature of Jekyll Island that you might want to pick up. And at that meeting, which included J.P. Morgan, it included Paul Warburg, who was a proxy for Nathaniel Rothschild. These 7 men devised the third central bank of the U.S. And then in 1913, Woodrow Wilson passed the Federal Reserve Act, which established the Federal Reserve Bank as the central bank of the U.S. And what's ironic about the Fed, which is still our central bank today, it is not federal. It's a private bank. It's a kind of a collusion of bankers, private bankers, and there are no reserves anymore in the Federal Reserve. At the same time Wilson passed the Federal Reserve Act establishing the Fed, he also passed the IRS Act, which created the IRS and the first time we ever had income tax. So the Fed and the IRS were born in 1913, and they were born both to confiscate our wealth. So 1913 was not a great year for us US citizens. Now in 1933, FDR actually outlawed gold coins. And if you look over on the right-hand side, you'll see under executive order, the president says you're required to deliver your gold coins. So basically, FDR came in, we had the Depression going on, he created the New Deal, which failed, he created the New Deal, which failed, and he needed to finance these programs. So we basically said, turn in your gold, I will give you $20 bills printed by the Federal Reserve, and I'll exchange you for your $20 gold coins, $20, or your $10, $10, etc. Very shortly after, in 1934, Roosevelt then changed the conversion rate of $20 per ounce for gold to 35 per ounce. And in essence, he took from the citizens about 75% of their wealth. And the dollar was still backed by gold, but US citizens could not own gold. They could own jewelry, they could own collector coins, but they could not own the old $20, $10, $5 gold coins. 1944, there was a group of economists from all over the world that met in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire. And that is where they devised that the US dollar would be deemed the reserve currency of the world. So what that means is that if you're going to have international trade, so if France wants to buy, olives from Spain, France needed to convert their French francs into dollars and give dollars to Spain for their olives. Now, those dollars were convertible back, and the foreign countries could convert that to gold that was in Fort Knox at the US. But for global trade, the US dollar became the reserve currency of the world. And why was that? Because the dollar was backed by gold in Fort Knox, and it was termed the dollar is as good as gold, because it was. It was convertible to gold for foreign countries, but not by the US citizens. In 1963, JFK issued an executive order. He wanted to back the dollar by silver, wanted to convert all paper currency into silver certificates, and he was obviously assassinated. Some would say that LBJ was part of that assassination, the CIA. There's all kinds of conspiracies that you could look up. But very quickly in 1964, that executive order was retracted. And as I said at the start of this presentation, 64 was the last year for dimes, quarters, and half dollars to have 90% silver in them. And then from 1965 to 1970, the half dollar with Kennedy's face on it, here's one, 1968, had 40% silver in it. Now, up until 1971, the US dollar was still backed by gold in Fort Knox. So we were still on a gold standard, even though only 10% of the monetary supply that was all across the globe was backed by gold, only 10%. But what was happening was countries were claiming their gold. They could repatriate their gold. And a lot of countries had sent their gold to us during World War II, as England, as France, all these countries were getting bombed. They sent their gold to us to store for them, keep it in Fort Knox, but they always had the ability to repatriate, to claim their gold if they wanted their gold back. And what happened in 1971, we had the Vietnam War, we had incredible inflation because we were printing so much money to pay for all kinds of social programs. We had Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, public housing, all kinds of programs. And in order to fund those, the Federal Reserve was printing money to fund those programs. So countries were losing their faith in the dollar. And Charles de Gaulle actually wanted all of his gold back. And there was an assassination attempt on him in 70. And he didn't get all his gold back, but there was a threat. Who shot him? Who was going to take him out? There's all kinds of conspiracy theories there. But in 71, Nixon took us fully off the gold standard. So as of 1971, we are on what's called a fiat currency, meaning that our dollars are backed by nothing, only the willingness of people to think that they have value. So that's called fiat currency. If you look on the right-hand side, you see a gas station where it says 25 cents per gallon of gas. So that's from 1964. And when I gave this presentation a couple months ago, I'd say, listen, gas has actually stayed the same price, because today, I would buy a silver quarter from someone for about $3. So gas was still, right around $3. So the cost of gasoline stayed the same. It was the value of our currency that went down as we moved away from silver. But now silver had such an increase over the last couple of weeks that silver quarter is worth about $5 today. And so now your silver quarter that you would have used in 1964 can buy you 2 gallons of gas today. So actually, gasoline has gone down in price in silver, but way up in price in dollars. And then as of 1975, US citizens were allowed to buy gold again. And what they bought back then was primarily Krugerrands, gold coins that were minted in other countries. But it was, people were now free to go out and buy gold again in 1975. So who are some of the enemies of gold throughout history? I put Alexander Hamilton on here. He loved gold. He wanted the dollar backed by gold, but I put him on here because he created the first bank of the US, which eventually led to the Federal Reserve. And also with this play that he put on here a couple years ago, now my mom and my mother-in-law both like rap music. So I have like a double negative against Alexander Hamilton. Another enemy of gold would be Woodrow Wilson, president in 1913. Here you see the creature from Jekyll Island. So you've got J.P. Morgan, John Rockefeller, Nathan Rothschild. Now, J.P. Morgan said, there's a famous quote, "Gold is money, everything else is credit." So again, he loved gold for himself, but eventually his actions led to gold being taken from the U.S. citizen. FDR, I mentioned, confiscated gold. LBJ, Nixon taking us off the gold standard. John Maynard Keynes, famous economist, he was actually a Bretton Woods. He called gold a barbarous relic. And it's Keynes's theories on economics that are taught in most of our universities today, which I'm very opposed to. It's really led to a lot of problems from my perspective. but he was a real enemy of gold. And then here's Ben Bernanke, who, when questioned a few years ago when he was Fed chairman, why do central banks own gold? Because all central banks across the world still own gold. He said it's because of tradition. So he's just a good representation of bad Fed chairman. Now, who are some of the heroes of gold? So we got Thomas Jefferson, who wrote the Coinage Act, Andrew Jackson, who killed the second bank I mentioned, Ludwig von Mises, who's a famous economist from the Austrian school, who are believers in gold and silver as money. They called it hard money. Ayn Rand, who was also an Austrian economist. JFK, big believer in silver. Alan Greenspan, who, if you go to 1969, wrote a paper on why gold should always be backing the dollar. But then when he became Fed chairman, he reduced interest rates down close to 0%, led to all kinds of bubbles, and kind of went against gold. So we don't know. I put a question mark above him. Ron Paul, who's also a very famous libertarian and Austrian economist, who questioned Bernanke when he was in Congress. Then a golden-haired president who actually put Andrew Jackson's portrait up in the Oval Office, and he actually owns gold toilets. So I think he's a big believer in gold. And then Judy Shelton, who is the most recent nominee for the Fed board. And she just made it through the Senate approval committee. And she's a big believer in gold backing the dollar. So we shall see what happens here in the near future. So you've heard me use the term money and currency. And they are very similar, except for one big difference between money and currency. So currency are the dollar bills that we have in our pocket. They're also known as Federal Reserve notes. Money is gold and silver. So they're both a medium of exchange. You could actually trade money or currency for goods. They are a unit of account. They're durable, although I'd say that paper dollars are not nearly as durable as coins. And if you buried $100 in your backyard in 1913, those might be deteriorated. But if you had them in coins, they'd still be there. Divisible, they can be divided into smaller units. They're portable. You can carry money or currency in your pocket. They're fungible. They're interchangeable. So $1 in my wallet is the same as $1 in your wallet. But the big difference between money and currency is a store of value. So if in 1913 you buried 5 $20 gold coins, so $100, and if you buried $100 in bills, when you dug them up, if the dollar bills were still actually survived being buried in the backyard, they're still only worth $100. But those gold coins at today's gold rate would be worth $9,000. So $100 that you buried in gold would be worth $9,000 today. So that gold stored your wealth. It's a store of value. And that's why the founders actually made gold and silver our money. So just taking a look at our historical coins. So pre-1965 dimes, quarters, and halves and silver dollars were 90% silver. Another term for these today for investors is junk silver, even though it's not junk. Silver dollars, they stopped production in 1935. So the peace dollars stopped in 35. They didn't start again until the Eisenhower dollar in 1971. And those had no silver in them. Half dollars from 65 through 70 were 40%. Here's kind of what I mentioned at the start. We've got this coin shortage, so please look at your coins. And if you have any questions, you could always call or email me. No hesitation. Now, up until 1933, gold coins were 90% gold, the other 10% copper. And there was a $1, very small, it's even smaller than a dime, a $1 gold coin. There was a $2.50, there was a $3, a $5, a $10, and a $20 gold coin. Today, you see in the lower right-hand side, those are gold and silver eagles. So those are the coins minted by the US Mint. So it's 1 troy ounce of gold and 1 troy ounce of silver. And just to reiterate, the silver coin is almost double the size, even though they're the exact same weight. Now here's something you'll find kind of interesting. I've got an old $20 bill and a newer $20 bill. So the old one, if you look at the bottom, it says in gold coin payable to the bearer on demand. So the old $20 bill before 1933 was a receipt to claim a gold coin out of the bank. So even though that was created by the Federal Reserve, we outsourced the printing of money since the US government was not allowed to print paper money, it still was redeemable for gold and even said it right on the bottom. Now, if you look at the modern day $20 bill, at the top it says Federal Reserve note. And what is a note? A note is debt. You actually owe, for the right to use their currency, you owe the Federal Reserve $20 plus interest by carrying this paper bill. So very different, what money was meant to be or currency was meant to be, just a receipt against gold versus what it is today. So this is a new couple of slides I put in. So just in July, gold hit a new all-time record. And the all-time record before was set in 1911. So from the time of the Coinage Act in 1792 to 1933, gold was $20 per troy ounce. So it maintained the same value, never wavered from $20. And actually we had over time what was known as deflation. So the same goods got cheaper and cheaper over time when we were on gold as our money, because we had efficiency, we had automation, things happened, technology always got better from 1792 to 1933. So goods became cheaper as gold maintained its value. From 1934 to 1971, gold was between $35 and $42 per troy ounce. And then when Nixon took us off the gold standard, it zoomed up to 100. 1975, it went up to 180. In 1980, it went up to 800 per troy ounce, and silver went up to $50 an ounce back in 1980. And then Paul Volcker, who was the head of the Federal Reserve, raised interest rates to 20% back in 1980. So any of you that were buying houses back then, you had to get a mortgage that was going to cost you 20% per year. So imagine that. Today you can get a mortgage for like 3%. But that was to bring in all of the dollars that were out there. So once we went off the gold standard, the Fed could print as many dollars as they want and buy treasuries from the US Treasury. And then it flooded the market with all these dollar bills. And so gold went way up in price. Volcker raised interest rates, which brought in people to buy treasuries. So individuals were buying bonds again. And then the value of gold and silver went down to $250 to $450 per ounce from 1981 to 2001. 2010 is the first time that gold breached $1,000. So again, it went up to 800 in 1980, down, back up to 1,000 in 2010. Then in 2011, it hit an all-time high of $1,920 per ounce. And then just last month, we finally went above 1920. And now, although today gold is at a huge down day, but until today, gold has been above $2,000 an ounce for a couple of weeks now, or at least a week and a half. So there's all kinds of reasons that we're seeing gold go up. I've got my theories, but a lot of it comes back to so many dollars out there on the street, across the globe, so many dollars printed by the Fed. We've got 26 trillion in debt. So as you create more and more of something, it loses its value. And gold is the inverse of the dollar. All right, so that's a lot of monetary history. So let's talk about other, all the uses of the precious metals. So both gold and silver, as I've explained at length, used as money, used for creating coins, used as bank reserves for central banks, but also gold and silver are used for awards. So Olympic gold and silver medals, the Oscars made out of gold, but I believe just gold plating. And originally, I believe the Olympic medals were made out of solid gold and silver, and now they're just plated. Of course, jewelry is the most common use for the precious metals, but also art and religious items made out of gold and silver, dental, both gold and silver were used extensively and still are today in dentistry. And gold and silver are the best conductors of electricity as well as heat. So both gold and silver are used for those purposes. Now silver, and I mentioned early on that silver is my favorite of the metals, and it's because it is so flexible, so useful. It is used in far more industrial uses than gold. Gold is primarily jewelry and coins and dental. But silver, way more. So flatware, hollowware. Here's some sterling silver pieces. It's used for candelabras. It's used for pictures, frames, sconces. Just a ton of uses. Photography. It was the elements that allowed you to develop photographs and x-rays. When you look at an x-ray, the black part on the x-ray is silver. Solar panels, because silver is the most reflective material known to man, there is a layer of silver on every solar panel. So in renewable energy, especially where we're heading right now, silver is the most important element in renewable energy. Silver is an antibacterial, so it's used in some of your deodorant. It's used in medical purposes like bandages and stitching. has silver woven in because it's an antibacterial. Under Armour brags about having silver woven into their clothes to stop odor and perspiration. There's something called colloidal silver, which you can take to prevent illness. It's used in water filtration. You've got silver solder. If you go into an old industrial building, the contacts in the electrical panel were all made out of solid silver. So it is the best conductor of electricity, as well as thermal, from a heat perspective. And then most important of all, batteries. We look at companies like Tesla, we look at electric cars. Silver is the most important element within batteries, and batteries are where we need to store all the energy created through these renewable sources. So, and what happens is silver gets used up in these processes. So you can't always recycle it. So silver is the element that needs to be dug up, reused. It's in every cell phone, every computer, every circuit board's got silver in it. All right, so how do you identify your own items that have value? So the first thing I recommend is getting a very powerful magnet, because gold and silver should not stick to a magnet, but I've been proved a lot wrong with silver, so it's only the first step. But if you're going through a jewelry box looking at gold jewelry, if you hold it up to a magnet and it sticks, then chances are very good that it's not gold. Unfortunately, it's probably gold plated. So here are two gold necklaces sitting next to each other. In the middle, you see that one of the gold necklaces is sticking to the magnet, and to the next picture to the right, you see the other necklace does not stick. So the one in the middle is not gold, it's gold plated, whereas the one next to it is 14 karat gold. And here's a couple of earrings, one sticking, one not sticking. Then get yourself a very powerful magnifying glass or a loupe. So what are you looking for with gold? All right, so if we can go back to our days in high school or our grade school, let's talk about fractions. So when it comes to gold, the denominator is 24. All right, so 24 divided by 24 is 100%. So 24 karat gold is 100% gold. So 10 karat gold, if you look on your jewelry and you see a 10K, that means it's 10 karat or 41.7% gold. If you divide 10 by 24, you get 417. And you can see here a picture of a piece of jewelry that says 417. That means it's 10 karat. 14 karat gold, 14 divided by 24 gives you 585. So gold that's 14 karat is 58.5% gold, or 585 parts per thousand, same thing. 16 karat dental gold is usually 16 karat. It's not stamped. If you've got a crown, a bridge, a filling, it's usually 16 karat gold, and I can test it. Anybody that does what I do can test it to show that it's 16. So most dental gold, if you have a crown or bridge that fell out, keep it. It's worth more than most of your jewelry. 18 karat gold, if you divide 18 by 24, you get 75%. And white gold, white gold is the same amount of gold as yellow gold. It just means there's more iridium, rhodium, platinum, palladium in it that turned it that silver or white color. So 75% gold is 18 karat gold. You can see over on the picture something that's labeled 750. That is 18 karat gold. Now, if any of you know anybody from India and you see them wearing jewelry, it's very yellow. That's actually 22 karat gold. Or when you look at it, it might be marked 917. Because 22 divided by 24 is 91.7. So it's 91.7% gold. And then 24 karat is, might be marked, now jewelry, believe it or not, there is jewelry from Asia, China, South Korea that I've bought that is marked 999, 99.9% gold. So that is basically 24 karat gold. Now silver is a little trickier. When you look at jewelry, you're looking for the word sterling, but usually on sterling jewelry, you'll see 925. So that means it's 92.5% gold, silver, and the other 7.5% is usually nickel. So sterling is 92.5% silver. So look for 925, look for sterling. Now you might also find items like, a piece of flatware, a spoon might say coin silver. Coin silver means it's 90% silver. And if you think back to US coins being 90% silver, coin meant the same as that, so 90% silver. Now, if you have antique pieces, if you have from foreign countries, you might not see a 925 or a sterling. You might see 800, you might see 835, you might see 900. So that means 80%, 83.5%, 90% silver. Also, items coming from Europe, whether it be England, Denmark, Germany, might have different marks on it, so hallmarks. So if you see that middle graphic, if you see that lion profile, and he's a little bit different depending on what country he's from, but that means sterling. So look at some of your old items and see if you see that lion. And then that last, where you see a letter within a geometric shape, that actually tells you the year. So you can see that 1 second at the bottom where you see a T, like a cursive T and a shield. That could mean it's from 1911. So that was the year that all the makers, all the silver makers, used that maker's mark with that year on it. Now, what's sad is when we have plated items, because plated means there's a very thin layer of silver over a base metal like nickel or copper. So if you see EP, electroplated, EPNS, electroplated nickel silver, EPBM, electroplated base metal, A1, silver over copper, community, triple plated, quadruple plated, doesn't matter how many plated it is, it's still plated, or plateado is Spanish for plated. So those all will tell you that an item is plated. So this item actually is what's called sterling weighted or reinforced, which you can see on the bottom. So a lot of these old candlestick holders, you'll turn them over. And what it means is that there is a chunk of cement here in the base with a thin, almost aluminum foil layer of silver or sterling over it. So you can see I weighed the candlestick, it weighed 9.3 troy ounces. Then I took apart peeled off all the sterling. And when I weighed it, it was now down to 1 troy ounce of sterling. So usually when I buy things like this, it might be anywhere from 10 to 15% I factor in for the sterling weight. But these candlestick holders are very common. You'll see sterling weighted, sterling reinforced, or both on the bottom, and that's what that means. All right, so let's talk about the process of buying and selling of precious metals. So why do people buy precious metals? And I am a believer in investing. So one reason would be a hedge against inflation of the dollar. And inflation means the printing of money, the creation, the increase of the monetary base, which leads to inflated prices. So for the last 20 years, when we hear inflation, we think it means higher prices. It actually means creation of the increase of money or currency that leads to higher prices. So you might buy gold and silver because you think the Fed is going to keep printing and printing. It's a great way to save for the future. It used to be that people would have 5 to 10% of their assets in gold and silver. I have a tough time convincing financial planners to actually encourage their clients to buy gold and silver. But historically, 5 to 10%. It's a safe investment. It's a way to preserve your wealth. I gave you that example of burying, $100 in your backyard. It's got beauty. It's very high quality, especially gold. People associate high quality with it. Gifts for loved ones. You got kids, grandkids, bar mitzvahs, weddings, sweet 16. You give gold and silver, and then giving gold and silver is a tradition. So definitely in Asian countries, they see it as this is my wealth is in my gold. They wear their wealth. It's tradition. So there are many ways to invest in gold and silver. So one is to buy physical metal. So actually attain coins or bars, and the old US coins are known as junk silver, but you can buy government issued coins and bars, and lots of different countries create coins. So in South Africa, it's the Rand. In Austria, it's the Austrian Philharmonic. In Canada, it's the Canadian Maple Leaf. And in the US, it's the US Eagle, the gold and the silver eagle. But you can also buy coins made by various refineries, by mints. There's all kinds of ways to buy physical metal. And there's 3 different ways to store your metal. There's unallocated, allocated, and segregated. I won't go into too much detail, but if you have questions, you can call me, email me anytime. You can invest in numismatic coins, and that's where you're buying coins based on their scarcity. So instead of buying it based on its gold or silver content, you're buying it because it's a rare year or it's a high quality, but that's different than buying it just as a gold and silver investment. You can buy equities, you can buy stock in mining companies, Newmont, Barrick. There's a lot of big miners. There are also junior miners. There's other companies involved in the gold and silver industry. And if you invest in a mining company and they've got 1 million ounces of gold in the ground, as gold goes up in price, the mining shares go up much more than the gold value, because that company was waiting around until gold went up before they mined it, before it made sense to do so. And if energy stays the same cost, your mining costs stay the same as the value of your metals goes up. There's ETFs, there's GLD and SLV based on the physical metals, but I prefer PHYS and PSLV. And I'm not a financial planner, guys, so don't take any of this as recommendations, just exposing you to some information. There's also ETFs based on the mining companies. So there's GDX is the most popular for majors. So that is an ETF that invests in the major miners. And then there's GDXJ for the juniors. There's mutual funds you can buy. You can invest in Perth Mint certificates where you're actually buying metal stored at the Perth Mint in Australia, which is the mint of the Australian government. It's the oldest mint in Australia. Or you can go out and find gold yourself. You can go panning in your local rivers. You can go out to California, go to Nevada, go to Arizona, where you can still find a lot of gold and silver. You can buy a metal detector. You can buy scrap gold and silver like I do and recycle it. So various ways to invest. Now, why do people sell? And these are my clients. You know, some people are downsizing, moving to a home or a condo or new home. They're moving to a retirement community. They're moving out of state. So they're trying to get rid of their stuff. Pack up and carry this. The kids and the grandkids don't want to polish it, so they look to sell it. Decluttering, people, especially these last few months, it's been everybody's, whether you like it or not, it's become a hobby to declutter over and over again, and you might unearth a bunch of gold and silver. So that might be a reason to sell it. Want to use the money for other investments. So I have clients who will take and sell
Excuse me, David.
me.
David,
yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
You're occasionally you're coming in and out
Oh.
with your microphone. Maybe just get a little closer to your mic.
All right, is that better? Maybe
It is
drifting.
perfect right now. Yeah.
Oh man, do I have to start over if
Nope, no. Just now it's started.
Oh man. All right. Okay. So using the investments for using the money for other investments. So selling flatware to turn around and buy coins, which is more investable. Safety. People don't always feel safe having a lot of gold and silver in their house. Maybe they have a special expenditure like remodeling. I buy a lot from heirs. So you might have a few siblings that inherit some jewelry from their parents upon their death, and they need to split it. And it's much easier to split money than it is to split jewelry. So that would be another reason to sell it. A lot of gold goes out of fashion. My wife Jill said she likes white gold. So a lot of people have yellow gold. They don't like it anymore. So they want to, sell it and maybe buy white gold. Unexpected expenses, the kids and grandkids don't want it, or maybe they want to give it as a charitable gift. So when you sell, it's important that if you work with someone like me, that they separate let's just focus in on gold. They separate your gold based on carat. So making a pile of 10 carat, 14 carat, dental gold, 18 carat, 22 carat, whatever the case may be. And if you think about it, if 10 carat is 41% gold and 18 is 75% gold, 18 karat weight for weight is worth double what 10 karat is. So it's important to separate it out, weigh it separately, and then whoever's buying it should base their price on whatever the current spot price, the global spot price is for gold and silver. And then for bullion, things like coins and bars, whoever buys it should be paying very, very close to the spot price because that is investable gold and silver, does not have to go through any refining process or anything like that. So last couple of slides, I've come up with a concept called gold for good. So I do really well for my clients. I'll buy their unwanted, old, broken, damaged items, give them a lot of money, but it's still kind of just a transaction of, kind of historical money for current currency. I came up with a kind of a charitable idea called Gold for Good, where we can raise money for different charitable causes. So I'll work with any type of group, could be a church, a temple, could be a bowling league, whoever's raising money for whatever purposes. I can buy people's gold and silver. They could donate a portion to that charity, or they can donate all the money I give them to that charity. So I can get very creative with this concept. If any of you are part of a group that you're looking to do fundraisers, this is kind of a new, interesting way to do a fundraiser. And you've got my phone number, my email. If you've got any questions about anything that I covered or things I didn't cover, you can always reach me by my cell phone. You can text, call me. You can reach me by my email. And if you've got items to sell, obviously I'd love to help you. But if you're looking to invest, I can even, you can definitely ask me questions. I'll share whatever I can. But of course, encourage you to do a lot of your own research. So that's my presentation. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. And sorry about the audio, Ifat and everybody.
That was awesome, actually, David. And so we have time for questions. If anybody would like to go ahead and just shout out your questions, that would be great. And
If
if
you
not,
are selling, where do you find the spot price so that you know that the person who's buying it from you isn't messing?
Isn't messing with you. Okay, so you can go to Kitco, KITCO.com, and Kitco always publishes the price, and you could watch it all day long like me. But here, let me show you on my phone. You can download the app, the Kitco app, and here, I don't know if, let's see. Here you can see the global spot price in gold and silver. It might be backwards on your screen. I don't know if you see it backwards, but you can see that gold is down like 90 bucks per ounce today. Silver's down over $2, so it's a big down day. But it's been going up, up, and away for the last 3 weeks, both of them. It's kind of sad for me to look at that. Okay, I'll try not to cry, guys. Okay. But yeah, I would go to Kitco, but there's also other sites you can go to, like AppMex. There's a lot of sites online that you can find the spot price.
I have a request from everybody. If you can take yourself off of blocking your video, I would like to take a picture with David in the group. Thank you.
How do you do that?
Oh, there's
Wow.
at the bottom, there's oh, how do I do it? I'm gonna hit print screen.
Wow.
So, and if you don't want to, that's fine. Diane and Roberta, we still can't see you, but that's fine. I'm gonna go ahead and take a real quick picture. Thank you. 1, 2, 3. Awesome. And sorry, David, I didn't mean to take your fire away.
No problem.
Okay, David, I'm a little confused with the dates. You said that 1964 was good for nickels, dimes, and quarters. What was the 1971? Why
All right,
was
so
1970?
All right, so good question. So 1964 was the last year that dimes, quarters, and half dollars were 90% silver. Pennies were never silver. And nickels, I didn't even cover this. The only years that nickels actually had silver were 42 to 46 during the war. And that's because we needed all the nickel to build tanks and other, armaments. So nickels, the only time they ever had silver was 42 to 46. They were 35% silver. But the big years for you to know is 1964 and before, dimes, quarters, and halves. And then 65 through 70, half dollars were 40% silver.
Half dollars, okay. Thank you.
And then 71, everything was junk. Or bad kind of junk, garbage. Copper and zinc, and that's it.
Any other questions for David?
Yeah, I'll ask. Yep, I've got one more. So, David, anytime it's real gold, real silver, it's going to be marked. If you don't find a marking anywhere on there, then it's probably costume.
Well, it's a good question. So it's important. I didn't go into it, but I bring with me an acid test kit. So let's say something's marked or it's a broken necklace and you don't see a tag. It still could be gold or silver. So it's important to be able to test it another way. So there's different, I bring with me an acid test kit where I can test for 10 karat, 14 karat, 18 karat, 22 karat. And it's not even a chemical reaction. It's just whether the gold can withstand the acid. And that way I could tell you, like this weekend, I bought a necklace from a woman and tags were missing, but I figured out it was 18 karat. But if someone looked at it, they could say, I don't know what it is. It's, it could be something. I'll give you $5 for it. I ended up paying her $700 for the necklace because I was able to test it to be 18 karat. So even if it's missing a tag, it still could be the good stuff. So.
Okay.
I have.
Sorry, one more question. Did I hear you say that you went to their house? So you would go and set an appointment and come so that we don't have to drag all our stuff to you?
That's one of the things I offer. I will go anywhere it's convenient for you. Your home, your lawyer's office, your bank. I've had meetings now where I'm always wearing a mask now, but I'll even wear gloves if people feel more comfortable. I had a meeting on Saturday in someone's backyard on their patio. So again, whatever people are comfortable, but I try to give real convenience. So yes, I'll go anywhere it's convenient for my customer.
I have a question. What about sterling silverware?
Yep.
I haven't checked mine. It was bought for me, thousands of dollars worth. This is 1958. Would those be marked also?
Yep. So here's a fork. Let me
Oh,
hold
yeah.
it.
I see it. Yeah.
I don't know if it's too blurry to see the word
Yeah.
sterling.
It would say that. Okay.
Yeah. So most
Okay.
flatware, especially made in the US, is going to say sterling.
Yeah.
Now, if it's from a foreign country or it's antique, you might have to look for that lion. You might look for other marks, but almost everything bought in the US is going to say sterling if it is. And I do have tests for it so that even if it's not marked, I can test it. But usually if it's not marked sterling, I know it's probably going to be plated. So look on the back of it, look at a fork or a spoon, and look for the word sterling.
Are you interested in that, in
yeah.
acquiring it? Okay.
I buy a ton of flatware, and it's, again, the stuff the kids and the grandkids don't want. They don't want to polish it.
Yeah,
So
right.
Exactly.
I love it.
Yeah,
But,
all right. Terrific.
Yep.
Thank
And it's
you.
based on weight. So again, sterling
Okay.
is 92.5% silver. So when I
Oh.
weigh it, I know exactly what the weight of the silver in the item is.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Dan, did you have a question? Gerber?
Yeah. Hi. I had one quick question, maybe stupid. I understand these are commodities, but if silver or gold came from a different country, if it came from Austria or this or that, is it all the same value, whether it was mined here or there? Just a question.
That's such a good question. So if you go back to that one slide I had where it's fungible, it's interchangeable, the reason gold and silver are so much better as money versus something like the dollar as the reserve currency, right, is that 1 ounce gold coin, whether it was minted in the US, in Austria, in Australia, and Japan, worth the exact same amount globally. No difference. So therefore, it's a much better way for foreign trade. So if you go to a foreign country and you have gold and silver in your pocket, it's worth the exact same, no matter where it was found, no matter where it was minted. So it's truly the best form of money because it's scarce, but it's available everywhere. It's valued in and of itself. It has intrinsic value. So exactly right, what you just said, a 1 ounce gold coin, a 1 ounce silver coin is worth the exact same no matter where it was minted.
Great. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Can I?
Yeah, go ahead, Beth.
I don't have a question for David, but I just want to tell Jacqueline Kimmel to say hi to Shelley from Betsy Sang. I used to work at Brunswick.
This is all small world stuff. He was
Yeah. I saw a person behind you, but I didn't see their face, but I recognized your last name.
Right.
So, but I was Betsy Sang when I worked at Brunswick.
I will tell him.
Yeah, I dated Bob Kaufman, who worked in the tax department. That's how he might remember me. But
Getting scandalous now. Finally, this meeting's getting interesting.
Right. And full disclosure, David said he worked in his grandparents' grocery store.
yeah.
His grandparents were dear friends of my parents, and his mom and I kind of grew up together with her siblings.
Okay.
And
Nice.
he worked at that grocery store, especially when we were first married and lived in the park. But that was before you were.
Nice.
So the grocery store was Mickey's certified. So my grandparents were Mickey and Lottie Hirsch, and it was right at Clark and Lunt in Rogers Park. So if anybody grew up in Rogers Park, lived around there, Clark and Lunt, Mickey's certified.
Did you go to Sullivan High School by any chance?
Not me.
Yeah.
No, because
Okay.
we lived, we moved to Buffalo Grove and then Highland Park. So it's a Highland Park High School.
Okay.
Well,
My
it was
mom, who's on
interesting.
here, went to Von Steuben, right, Ma?
Right.
Yes, did I? Yes.
It was an interesting talk. A lot of history.
David, it really was an interesting
Yeah.
talk, and we are not obligated to get off, but I wanted to make sure that I told David that was awesome, and thank you for sharing your expertise with us. And David shared a resource sheet, which I will send to everybody.
Great.
Yeah,
Also,
good.
yeah, absolutely. And like David said, you could also reach out to him as well. Our next meeting is September 8th. So put that on your calendar. Beth, you talked about meeting in person, and what I'd like to say about that is I'd like to hear everybody's comments in email, if that's okay. If you want to email me and share your thoughts about it, I'd really like to consider the option of meeting face-to-face outdoors before the weather gets cold. So certainly feel free to do that.
It doesn't have to be this monthly meeting, maybe just a separate meeting, you know, at 5 or lunchtime or early dinner, or, you know, before it gets dark. You know.
Absolutely. So, I think that's a great idea, and I'd like to hear people's thoughts on it. And like I said, we don't have to get off, and if you guys want to talk a little bit more, because I know that there are people coming together that haven't seen each other for a while, please do. So, but David, thank you.
I wish
Linda is back. I'm sorry. Linda is back with us. Linda, thank you so much for hosting our Zoom call.
Anytime. If you need me September 8th, let me know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
The background there, Linda.
How impressed, David, with all of your knowledge and research. Just the whole historical piece, not only the metals as they are today or their value. You've certainly done your research and know your topic, and very well presented. Thank you.
Yeah, I wish I had met you last year. My mom passed away a year ago, January, and we got rid of a lot of silver and stuff. And I wished I had heard this before that, but I don't know.
You just blame me for that.
Yeah.
Blame me I've been bugging her.
Yeah.
That little store in Glenview, you know, the store on Glenview Road? They got a lot of her stuff. So, but unfortunately, like a lot of her silver serving pieces, I guess, were, what is it? Plated?
Yeah.
Plated. So we didn't get much for that. I got quite a bit for her silver, sterling silver, you know, utensil, the flatware. But
the silver lining is now you all know David.
Yeah, I know. I wrote his number. I'm keeping his number.
And share it with others.
Yeah. Was that pun intended, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So I even got rid of some gold during that time. Some of my gold pieces, like my old wedding ring and engagement ring, you know, engagement ring and wedding band, and so.
Yeah, David brings home a lot of old wedding bands.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah.
I have a question. David, what do you do with the gold and silver once you buy it?
Good question. So I work with a refinery, and so I bring the gold and silver into the refinery. They weigh it, they melt it, and if you think about gold, I'll bring it in, separate it into 10 karat, 14 karat, 18 karat. They weigh it. When they melt it all together, it's one, homogeneous gold in this, in a crucible. So it's a liquid. They dip in a little glass tube and take a sample, and then they pour all the rest of it in and make a brick. They take the sample and they bring it to a special x-ray machine. The x-ray machine will say that sample is 52.85% gold. So then they weigh the brick and they pay me on the percent of that brick that's gold.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Interesting.
Same with silver, but silver's, a little bit different. Gold, it's all mixing together, where most silvers, the stuff I melt is almost all sterling.
Oh, great.
That was excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you.